Hi Doctor Who fans. Today I want to talk about restaging missing episodes of Doctor Who. I want to talk about the pros and the cons, especially comparing them to the missing episode animations, and also stuff like telesnap reconstructions. If they were to remount an episode of Doctor Who, what would that look like? And should it even happen in the first place? For a long time, I've been very much I'm not interested in restaging, I'm happy with the animations. But I'm happy to discuss them and keep an open mind.
And if you're not having fun, then just leave.
So first off, I'm going to start with the pros, because I think that might be a bit more of a positive way of starting this video, because I'm sort of on the camp of I'm not really interested in them. But maybe after this video, I might have changed my mind. I am terrible at keeping the same opinion. I change my mind literally every single week. Like when Twice Upon a Time came out, I made a video saying how I thought it was insulting to William Hartnell's legacy, but I don't necessarily feel that way anymore. So I think opinions change, I change, we're all different people. I become less angry about things as I get older. If they were to restage missing episodes of Doctor Who, I think one of the great things about it would be a bit more of a room for a performance. With animation, they're a bit limited on how they can express emotion and movement, whereas in live action, they have a lot more scope to do that. Also, if they were to restage these episodes, they probably will have a bigger budget than the original production and probably would have a bit more time to spend on it too. And I think for stuff like historicals, where there aren't any monsters to animate and there's not as many action set pieces and stuff, I think a live action would be a lot more appropriate for an historical. And also there's just a lot of people who don't like animation. They're not a fan of the missing episode animations that have come out. Sometimes it's due to they're not a big fan of the visual style, or they're just not people who are interested in animation full stop. And I think that's fine. I don't think every single piece of media needs to be catered for every single individual person. Like there's heaps of Doctor Who novels out there, but I'm not going to read them because I'm not much of a novel reader. I don't really like fiction, I prefer non-fiction if I'm going to read a book. But I'm not going to sit here and be angry that they're making fiction books for Doctor Who. Not everything has to be catered for me, even though it should be, because everything's about me.
That's hot.
If they were to restage these missing episodes, how would they actually approach it? Would they attempt to recreate the studio how it was back when it was originally made? And they would follow the camera script, making sure the shots are the same, everyone's blocking is the same, the words are exactly the same as they were on the script. Are they going to make David Bradley listen to the audio and say, you need to say it like this because it needs to match up? Or are they going to be a bit more, we're going to take the story and kind of reimagine it. We're going to give it a bigger budget. We're going to cast more appropriately. We're going to let you take the text and perform it how you want to. Because I think if they were like David Bradley, you have to do exactly how William Hartnell did it, I think it would come across as cold and stale and weird. And I think it would go into this uncanny valley type of scenario where it would just feel wrong and unnatural. Whereas if they were to reimagine it, they would be able to do their own performance and their own take on the Doctor, because David Bradley has a different take on the first Doctor than William Hartnell did. I'm not saying which is better, even though I think William Hartnell was better, but there are people who really enjoy David Bradley's performance, and I think he does a pretty good job.
She's pretty good for her age.
But it's not 100% the same, because it can't be. So then it raises the question, if they were to reimagine this episode, and they were doing their own performances, and the script was slightly different, and the locations were bigger, the sets were bigger, the costumes were different, is it really a remake, or is it a reimagining? And then it's really the question, like, do we want that? Do we want a reimagining of the original production? But then I guess you could say the animations are a reimagining of the original production too. But for me, because they have the original performances in there, in the audio, it feels as if it's still tied to the original production, if that makes sense. And then I think it really brings the question, if I was to watch Unearthly Child, The Daleks, Edge of Destruction, Marco Polo, would I feel like this reimagined version of Marco Polo fits in with these other ones? But then I guess people would say the animations don't feel like they fit in. You could watch the 10th Planet episode 4 animation and then watch Power of the Daleks, and the animation style is so wildly different, it doesn't feel like the same show as well. So are these missing episode animations or reimaginings or reconstructions, are they an accurate replacement for what's missing? Or are they a fun little extra? And I think it depends on your personal opinion of what these projects are meant to do. And I think that's a very subjective, and it's up to you individually. For some people, the animations aren't close enough to the original, so they're not interested in it. They'd rather watch a reconstruction with off-air photos and telesnaps, which is closer to the camera script and has photos from the real production. And then some people are more like, I care about the story rather than the production. So the animation is a bit more accessible at telling the story to me than a reconstruction is. So I think they're two very different camps. And I think BBC at the moment with their animations that they've done, they're very much on the side of, we're valuing the story over the original production. We're inspired by the original production, but we're gonna add a bit of extra budget on top of it to make it look a bit bigger and a bit better and a bit less cheap looking. Let's say, for example, let's say the web planet was missing and they wanted to reconstruct that episode. They did a reimagining of it. They remounted the story. Would they have someone in a Zarbi costume walking up to the camera and bumping into it? Or would they have cut that moment because it's awkward and it shouldn't have happened, it was a mistake? But because they couldn't reshoot it, they had to keep it in the episode. And I think Doctor Who fans, the big nerdy ones, are like, we want to keep every little moment, every little flaw, because it's a part of what makes Doctor Who special to them. And then on the other side, it's like, well, if my mum was to sit down and watch this episode, she would laugh at that moment and think, oh, this is so cheap and silly. And I think both takes on that are equally valid. I think there is no right or wrong way of approaching these missing episode reconstructions because everyone's going to have a different opinion on it. So today I'm just trying to talk about these things. I'm just putting things out there, and I want you to make up your own personal mind about what you would like to see out of a missing episode reconstruction.
And if you're not having fun, then just leave.
I want to talk quickly about the University of Central Lancashire's remounts of Mission to the Unknown. I think it worked so well for a variety of reasons. I think the director and everyone who worked on it did an amazing job, and that's why it's so good. I also think it really works because the Doctor and the main companions weren't in it. I think if you had someone playing Susan or Barbara or Ian and the Doctor, all four characters we know very, very well, it could be quite jarring. Especially to those Uber fans who have watched the reconstructions and know these stories off by heart. If you saw another actor coming in and playing a scene differently to the original, a scene that means a lot to you, it could be really upsetting. Like in episode 2 of Marco Polo, The Singing Sands, there is a great moment between Barbara and Susan where they're reflecting on their journey together. And I think if they were to remount that, the actors would do an amazing job at it, but would it be the same? And also, would it have that same emotional weight because you know these are different actors? They're not the same characters that we know and love from those past 3 stories. They're different actors who are playing those characters. And once again, I'm not saying it wouldn't have the same emotional weight, but for me, I don't know if it would. A lot of people talk about deepfakes as an alternative, and I'm a bit on the fence about them. I think where the technology is at the moment, they're not good enough for me to think, oh, this is a normal performance. I think it's in that weird uncanny valley. I think it has potential in the future, but not right now. When I imagine myself on set, if I was directing this, the idea of a bunch of actors trying to lip sync correctly to this audio whilst knowing the words, whilst also trying to perform, sounds like a lot to ask for a bunch of actors. Not to mention the budget on top of that to do all that CGI work, and then it still will feel a bit awkward and unnatural. I think people always talk about the Web of Fear animation, episode 3, where it's motion capture and they're like, it all feels fluid and weird. Could you imagine a deep fake version? It would feel even weirder. And I'm talking about the technology where it is at the moment, but I think in the future, maybe that could be a thing. But I don't think we're at that point yet. And in the end of the day, you're still hiring actors, you're still booking studio space, you're still remounting production, you're building sets, you're doing all this and that. And then CGI work on top of that, that's a lot of money. And as the Daily Mirror just reported, BBC America have decided not to continue with the animations, so maybe even these cheap animations, as everybody calls them, are too expensive. So trying to remount this and then doing deepfake and all this CGI work, I think it would be so hard. But I'm not saying if the BBC was like, we've just made this thing and we've remounted it and done deepfakes, I would still watch it, and who knows, it could be amazing. And I think it could be a technological feat if they did it, but I'm just saying I don't know if it's really at that point yet. There's also the potential that if they did restage something like Marco Polo, I'm going to keep using that as the example. if they did that project, they invested that money into it, the likelihood of an animation using the original audio happening is probably pretty slim after that. Because in the BBC's eye, they'd be like, well, we reconstructed Marco Polo for you right here. But that's conjecture. Who knows, they could do both. But talking about the negatives, I think it really does come down to the fact that it's not the original characters, it's not the original performances by the actors. And I appreciate the fact that they have the original audio and then they can animate on top of it and use it as a base. And when I look at the stuff like The Mandalorian, I'm not a Star Wars fan, but I've seen where they've replaced Luke Skywalker's face or whatever they're doing. I'm not really sold on it, but that was just a few short shots. Changing those short little scenes into 7 25-minute episodes feels like that's a step too far. And also a lot of people talk about the morals behind bringing an actor back to life and making money off of their image. I think it's pretty easy as a viewer of something to say, oh, this is just a piece of entertainment. This is a character I love and it's great that they brought them back. But to some people, they're like, you're bringing a person back from the dead. They were a real life person, so they can dance in front of a screen and play a little character that you like. Is that wrong? But then again, is these animations where we're taking Patrick Troughton's voice and William Hartnell's voice and reanimating it, is that also morally wrong? Or is it a way of preserving their original performance? Is it a way of honoring their original performance? Who knows? I think it's a moral question that's up to you as an individual to decide for yourself. I haven't figured it out for myself, so I really don't know. Personally, I'm always excited about any way of bringing back a missing episode. I find the projects really interesting and fascinating, and whatever the BBC decides to do or fans decide to do, I'm looking forward to seeing it, and I really like to see more stuff happen. I'm hoping this news about BBC America not continuing their funding for the missing episodes is not a detriment to the excitement surrounding missing episodes. I hope people are still excited about them, and people are still wanting more, and people are going to attempt their own versions of this, and I'm really excited to see what happens next. I don't think it's over, and I don't think it's going to be over anytime soon. So what would you like to see? Would you like to see more animations, different reconstructions, or reimagining? What's your idea of the perfect reconstruction? I've heard people talk about like sock puppets and stuff like that, and I would rather die than watch something like that. But to other people, that sounds like a fun way of doing it. So who knows? Hi, I'm Josh Snares. I'm auditioning for the role of the first Doctor Who in the Daleks Master Plan remake. Okay, just like freeballing ideas here, but what if the Doctor was like kind of a slut? All right, so what if the Doctor, instead of stopping the Daleks, decided to like give him a big old smooch? All right, so what if the Doctor just beat the shit out of everybody? Just like, we're not feeling that? That's okay. Okay, I'll just read the line as is. I'm afraid, my dear, the Daleks have won. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Josh Snares YouTube channel.